Alright guys, in this video we're going to be going over briefly how to write algebraic expressions given, some phrases or some wording or some kind of question that prompts you to do so. So I'm not going to get into the details of everything. Your teacher should probably already be telling you the importance of algebraic expressions, why you need to make them, differences between independent and dependent variables, etc. I'm just going to kind of go over how to do this basically, just the fundamentals of doing this, and how to approach problems like this. So, for starters, I have this little table, or whatever you want to call it right here. Some key terms: sum is going to be addition, of course, difference is going to be subtraction, product is going to be multiplication, and quotient is going to be division. So like if someone asks, what is the sum of 5 and 4, that means addition, right? So 5 plus 4 is 9, etc. Stuff like that. What's the product of 2 and 1? 2 times 1, 2. So things like that. Your teacher should already have told you that. Should be basic material for that. And right here, we're going to get started with number 1. So what is 5 more than x? Okay, so we're not looking for a specific number, right? We're looking for in fact, I'm going to write this here, expression. We're not looking for an actual, definitive, hold on, let me write this. We're not looking for an actual number right now. We're just looking for an expression to represent a given number. So if it's 5 more than x, well, we know that more than is going to be plus, or the sum, right? So that's just going to be what? 5 plus x, right? Simple as that. That's your answer. Pretty simple, right? So what is the product of 28 and y? Well, we know that product means multiplication, right? So that's going to mean 28 times y. Now what we do is generally we don't really write it like that with a little dot, and we don't even do it like with a little x or like with the parentheses. What we like to do in algebra is if we have a coefficient, in this case this would be a coefficient, coupled with a variable, when they're being multiplied of course, we tend to just put the variable right next to the number that's being multiplied by. So 28y is how we would write that, usually in algebra. If we have 5 divided by a, pretty simple. 5 divided by a. Now in algebra we also don't necessarily like to write it like that. We like to stick to fractions. Okay, so if it's divided is basically fractions. 5 divided by a, and that's your answer. Now later, when you get into probably either algebra 2 or maybe later in algebra 1, you're going to know that a can never be a can never be 0, because the denominator cannot be 0. You cannot divide anything by 0. Try it in your calculator. You'll get an error in your calculator. I will guarantee you that. So next we have 100 decreased by z. So decrease is obviously subtraction. So it's going to be 100. If it's decreased by z, it's going to be minus z. Now you got to be careful with the wording in this. If it's z decreased by 100, it would be z minus 100. Let me box this, by the way. Or if it was, let's say it's z less than 100, it's going to be 100 minus z. If it was 100 less than z, it would be z minus 100. So you got to be careful with the wording. If you're confused, ask me. I'll post another video on it, or go ahead and ask your teacher. And then finally, right here, we have number 5. So 28 plus the product of 8 and b. So first of all, what the heck is this? So I like to kind of break this up into little sections, all right? So it's 28 plus. Let's write that down, right? Okay. We got 28 plus. Now we have this other section. So we have this section, and then we have this section, right? The product of 8 and b. Okay, so we know a product is multiplication, right? So what are we multiplying? Well, we know we're multiplying 8 and b together, right? So that's 8 times b, or as we know from earlier, since we just kind of put the two of the coefficient and the variable just together side by side, we would write this as 8b, right? So 8b. And that's your answer, believe it or not. So yeah, 28. So it's 28 plus the product of 8 and b. And this is the product of 8 and b. And this is your algebraic expression for that question.